Good evening and welcome to Story Hour. I'm tonight's host, Laura Blackwell. My lovely co-host, Daniel Marcus, started Story Hour over a year ago to help everybody to remain connected while we're apart. And even though some of us are sort of creeping out of our holes now, we still enjoy gathering around the campfire to tell stories every Wednesday evening. It's just so nice and warm here. I haven't wanted to leave. So welcome back to those of you returning, and welcome to those of you joining us for the first time. As usual, we have two writers reading for their favorite nonprofits. Tonight's readers are Megan E. O'Keefe and Sam Rebelein. If you are fortunate enough to help others during this time, please consider a donation to one or both of tonight's featured nonprofits, the ACLU and Justice for Black Girls. Megan E. O'Keefe is reading for the American Civil Liberties Union. The ACLU dares to create a more perfect union beyond one person, party, or side. Their mission is to realize the promise of the United States Constitution for all and expand the reach of its guarantees. You can learn more at aclu.org. Sam Rebelein is reading for Justice for Black Girls. Justice for Black Girls believes that Black girls are expanders of knowledge. The mission of Justice for Black Girls is to elevate the voices of Black girls and expand global knowledge of how US-based systems of power respond to and perpetuate the abuse of Black girls. You can learn more at justiceforblackgirls.com. If you're here on Zoom, please feel free to leave your camera on. It can be lovely for our readers to see the humans who are here with us tonight. And everybody chime in on the text chat if you like. But just on Zoom. If you're joining us on Facebook, we really appreciate it, but we may not be seeing your messages in real time. So also behave. Our first reader tonight is Megan E. O'Keefe. Megan E. O'Keefe was raised amongst journalists, and as soon as she was able, joined them by crafting a newsletter which chronicled the daily adventures of the local cat population. She lives in the Bay Area of California and spends her free time tinkering with anything she can get her hands on. Her fantasy debut, Steal the Sky, won the Gamma Morningstar Award, and her space opera debut, Velocity Weapon, was nominated for the Philip K. Dick Award. The third novel in her Protectorate trilogy, Catalyst Gate, comes out later this month. Megan, welcome.
Hey, Laura, thank you for having me.
Delighted to have you. Thanks for joining us.
So today, I'll be reading a short story, naturally. This is an older one of mine, but one of my favorites. It was published in, I think 2015 in the now sadly defunct Shimmer magazine. But Shimmer magazine has experienced a semi-rebirth as the Deadlands, which is a totally different magazine, but it is still under the banner of editor Elise Tobler, Catherine Tobler. So similar vibes, I feel, but very dead body focused, which is kind of cool. There may or may not be dead bodies in the story I'm about to read. You shall find out. All right, so this is of Blood and Brine. Child's mistress was out when the scentless woman entered the shop and laid a strip of severed cloth upon the counter. For once, Child wished her mistress were at her side. "May I help you?" Child asked, around a clot of fear. "Make me a vial of this perfume," Scentless said, her voice honey-sweet, though her sillage was hollow. "And another exactly the same, but with the tiniest hint of the sea." Child squinted, desperate to find a hint of the woman's identity beneath the netting she wore across her green-brown eyes. Scentless had foregone the usual patterns women painted around their eyes. Her face was a bare mask. Unease dampened the palms of Child's hands. The woman was old enough to have passed her naming day, but no matter how Child flared her nostrils and breathed, she could not scent the woman's name. Scentless wore the wrap all named men and women wore, covered head to toe in thin black fabric to protect her skin from the poison of the sun's red glare. The cloth of her wrap had a subtle sheen, the fabric so smooth Child could not even see the weave. She must be wealthy. The slender arc of her cheekbones rose just above the bottom of her face netting, hinting that she was also beautiful. And yet the woman wore no scent. She had no name. Even the dead smell, Child thought, then shook herself. This was business. Whatever had urged this woman to go out into the world without a name was none of her concern. Forcing the pleasant shopkeeper smile her mistress had taught her, Child made a show of rinsing her hands in clean water, then scrubbing them with salt and rinsing them again. She dried her hands on a fine, fresh rag and held them up for Scentless's inspection. The woman leaned forward, sniffed the air, and nodded her approval. Thus prepared, Child gathered the cloth into her hands and brought it as close to her nose as she dared. The aroma was warm and spice-tinged, cardamom and violet, with the faintest whiff of balsam. The sea would be a pleasant addition to such a smell, but Child had no idea how to blend an aroma like that. I can recreate this by evening, Child said, but the addition of the sea will take time. There is no single oil for such a thing. Scentless inclined her head, the supple fabric of her wrap hissing softly as the folds brushed against each other. I will need it by the full moon, she said, and laid a rope of silver upon the counter alongside the cloth. Child's throat clenched. Such a sum was no small thing to turn one's nose up at, even if the deadline was nigh impossible. Not daring to touch the silver, lest she spoiled the cleanliness of her hands, Child folded the severed cloth and set it aside, then took up a slip of paper and grease pencil that had already been cleaned. She breathed deep, settling the butterflies fighting to escape through her lips. Forgive my asking, she said, but what is your name? I cannot smell it on you. The woman's eyes crinkled at the corners. Whether in amusement or anger, Child could not tell. I wear none. Put what you like upon your paper. I will return in 3 days to check your progress. I will bring you a gold rope if you finish in time. She pressed black gloved hands together and bowed deeply, then turned and stepped from the shop, back into the hot red eye of the sun's regard. Child stared at the paper, stunned. A whole gold rope. It was enough to buy her own wrap, her own name. Chewing her lip, she wrote "Scentless" at the top of the paper, then crossed it out over and over again until the name was little more than a black square. Her mistress had not been here. She did not need to know. Heart hammering, Child filled in the square until it was black as coal. Beneath it, she began to make notes on what she had smelled in the cloth. Ivy beneath cedar, her mistress, returned that evening with wine so rich on her breath Child scarcely scented her arrival. She staggered a step, then slung herself into a creaking chair in their workshop, squinting eyes veined with red spider webs at her. Child tensed, turning on her stool so that her back guarded her work, and laid a palm flat over Scentless's receipt. You're working late, her mistress slurred. We had a new client today, a wealthy one. Hesitantly, Child pulled a length of silver from the pocket of her apron. Ivy beneath Cedar's eyes sparkled beneath the netting of her wrap, reflecting the glitter of the lantern light against the precious metal. What did she want for so much? Her mistress scoffed. To change her name? She wanted cardamom over violet, centered with balsam, Child added in a rush. 2 vials. Well, her mistress heaved herself to her feet and took the length of silver from her. That is a simple enough task for you. If you make her happy, we might use some of this for your own naming day. You're meant to take the wrap in, what, a month, 2? 4 weeks, Child said, unable to keep a flush from creeping across her cheeks. Right, good girl. Ivy beneath cedar gave her a thick-handed pat on the shoulder. She straightened, brushed the rumpled folds of her wrap smooth, and then stumbled through the back door toward her bedchamber, humming an uneven tune all the while. Child's small fist clenched. She was no fool. There would be no silver left for her by the time her naming day came. Ivy beneath cedar would drink every last silver away. But the gold rope, that she could use. Child smoothed the wrinkles her sweating palm had left on Scentless's receipt and returned to her work, fingers dancing among warm amber bottles lit by the glow of her oil lamp. She didn't dare burn candles. Tallow and beeswax were too strong of scent. They would muddy her work. She needed clarity now if she were going to distill the sea. Child walked the edge of the cold shore, bare feet sinking in rough sand. The glare of the sun cast the pale beige granules in an eerie pink light, as if blood had spilled across them and then been diluted by the waves. Beak-pecked carcasses of sea creatures lay along her path, their poisonous flesh bulbous with tumors, even after those few birds who could stomach them had picked them over. Why anyone would want to desire to smell like those wretched waters, Child could not guess. The beach was empty, as it always was, save for a small group of mourning. They bundled their dead, 2 or 3, she could not tell, onto a floating bier, set the wooden slats alight, and shoved it into the sea. Child caught her breath, anger tightening her chest as flames licked up around the bier, revealing the wraps the dead had been sent to their rest within. It was such a waste. But then they had earned them. It was their right. She turned upwind to avoid the smoke and breathed deep of the air, closed her eyes, and flared her nostrils. At the base of the scent of the sea was the brittle bark of the trees which ringed it, warm and dry. Overlaid with the overwhelming crush of the water itself, a cool menthol middle mingled with the wet vegetal aroma of aquatic plant life. But there was something else above it all, something that took those 2 meager elements and made them say sea. There was the brine, of course, metallic iron, and the air itself, crisp as if lightning had just struck. Both aromas were too ephemeral to bottle. She sighed, opened her eyes, and kicked clumps of sand tangled with rotted seaweed. The cardamom over violet perfume she had already made, and she clutched it tight in her pocket, warming the hard glass with her palm. Ivy beneath Cedar's workshop was not suitable to this task. She didn't have the ingredients required. Child extended a finger in her pocket, felt the small thread of copper she kept hidden there, her week's meager pay. She could buy a new fragrant oil or resin, if she could find one. And then with the gold rope, she could start her own shop and blend her own name. The market awnings of the city of Bahat were dyed green, but in the high light of noon, the tops of them turned brown under the red light. Child blended amongst the crowd as best she could, but she was tall for her age, and that made her difficult to miss. She drew stares, the people of Bahat wondering just what a girl her age was doing, unnamed and without her wrap. Child paused, glancing at the backs of her hands. Even under the shade, her hat took the sun's. Even under the shade of her hat, the sun's glare took its toll. Her skin, nearly 14 summers old, was already dry and cracked as an ancient lake bed. Soon it would be dangerous to go without. Soon the cracks in her skin would begin weeping dark fluids, and no emollient salve would hold the spread of the sun sickness at bay. Ivy beneath Cedar wouldn't care. Apprentices were easy to come by. The justice of Bahat would see no harm done. Those who failed to earn enough to purchase their own wraps before the sickness took them were considered useless. Just another mouth to feed from the scorched soil. Child swallowed and shook her head. No, she would capture the sea. She would claim the scentless woman's gold. Embarrassment blushed her cheeks, added haste to her steps. She wove among the hundreds of other men and women of the market, catching hints of their names as she slipped between them. A blunt name struck her, without nuance, without balance. Mirander Clove, or was it over? She couldn't tell. The dominant notes had been blended in equal measure, competing. The heady scents competed for dominance, bludgeoning her senses. Curiosity lifted her head and she turned, following her nose. A male silhouette familiar enough to tickle the back of her mind stood beside a market stall, weighing a bottle in his hand. The man paid for the bottle and set it in his basket, a basket she recognized. That man, no, that boy, was Limanover Neroli's apprentice. He was not even 12 summers, and already he was named and wrapped, poorly, but named and shielded from the sun nonetheless. Child hunched her shoulders and hurried toward another merchant, eager to prove her own worth. The first stall she came to was filled with the usual base notes, sandalwood and patchouli, white musk and dark. She moved on systematically, sniffing every single offering until her nose went numb and she was forced to rest. Child lingered near the stall of a coffin maker so that the bitter, bright aroma of his roasted beans would refresh her senses. At the shop, her mistress kept a bladder of the beans for cleansing the nasal palate, but she hadn't dared to bring them with her. Ivy beneath cedar would suspect her of stealing before she did borrowing. While Child rested, a tall woman approached and purchased kaffa. Her voice sweet and her eye makeup elaborate. Rolls of black danced like eddies of wind around her lashes. As she turned to leave, a breeze ruffled her wrap, blowing her scent towards Child's overtired nose. Balsam, violet, and cardamom. Child stiffened, sniffed the air once more to be certain. The woman drifted back into the crowd, nursing her kaffa. Entranced, Child followed. Cardamom over Violet led her out of the market and into wider, half-empty streets, until they were climbing up winding ways and skirting the fences of the homes bigger than any shop Child had ever seen. Strange gardens grew beyond those gates, inedible plants that thrived under the harsh light, their huge leaves drooping between the forbidding iron. Child attempted to slow, to blend into those lingering, but her clothes were too filthy and her feet dribbled ocean sand with each step. She did not belong here. She did not even have a wrap to obscure that fact. Cardamom over Violet turned into one of those iron gates, trailing the edge of her wrap to disappear among vibrant greens. Child hesitated, then took a few quick steps forward, hoping to catch sight of some small clue or just another sniff, just to be sure. Fingers wrapped around her arm, vice tight, and yanked her into the greenery. She stumbled, tripped, and tried to pull away on instinct, but her other arm was grabbed and pinned to her side. Cardamom over Violet peered at her through the wrap's obscuring eye net, her eyes a familiar green-brown. Child stilled in her grasp. "Why are you following me?" the woman asked. And though her voice was sweet, it was not the honey tones Child remembered from Scentless. "I thought I knew your scent, Cardamom over Violet. Please forgive me. I was mistaken," Child said. The woman released her and leaned back, pressing her back against the gate. Relief flooded her posture. A slump came to her shoulders. "No, forgive me for grabbing you, Child. I am on edge." Child eased forward a half step. "Are you well?" Cardamom over Violet's head jerked forward, her shoulders squared. "I'm fine, only grieving. The spirit of my sister." She broke off and shook her head. "Never mind. I am a silly, mad woman." Child licked her lips and clenched her hand around the vial in her pocket. "Maybe it was your sister's scent I recognized?" "Impossible," the woman snapped. "My sister drowned in the sea. An accident. Now go," she pointed. "Go back to your world, little one." Child crossed the hot and haze, unable to peel her fingers from the vial. Cardamom over Violet's scent had been correct. She was certain of it. Her nose never lied to her, even if it was tired from a day of blending. She pushed her way free of the market press. She caught a whiff of something clean and sharp, like the rain around lightning, like the air above the sea. She froze, turned slowly, found the aroma turned with her. Shaking herself, leaves fell from her hat. The vibrant green bruised deep where they had been crushed against her. Leaves from Cardamom over Violet's garden. Before they could be trodden upon, she scooped them up, gathered them near her nose, and breathed deep. Yes, that was it. That was the scent of the air above the sea. Now she just needed the brine, the iron. Regret pinged through her, bitter and queasy. Regret because she had already made her choice, already knew what she must do to survive. She drew a deep breath to steady her nerves. Every good perfumer knew where to find the scent of iron. She glanced at the angle of the rusted sun, saw it seeping down into dusk. Ivy beneath cedar would be out by now, drinking away her silver. And Child had her own key to the shop. She would not be disturbed. Scentless came the next morning. Her wrap was the same fine weave, the same loose fit. Her eyes bore no marks, but shone green-brown down at Child, a green-brown that was familiar to her now. Peering through the shadow of Scentless's eye net, Child followed the partial line of a cheekbone, marked the edge of the top of her nose. More than sisters. They had been twins. Child's fingers trembled as she set the first vial upon the counter and nudged it forward. She had not bothered to set the wax on the cork with the seal of the shop. She wanted no link between the two. "Here is Cardamom over Violet," she said, and watched the corners of the woman's eyes twitch with subtle recognition. "And the other?" the woman asked. Taking a deep breath, Child set a second vial upon the counter. It was a little less full than the first, its cork also unwaxed. It's unfinished, Scentless said, her voice as dulcet as ever. I need to know two things first. Child willed strength into her voice and heard it crack anyway. Ask, the woman said, a lilt of curiosity creeping through. First, will you pay me the gold? Scentless pulled a rope of gold from within the folds of her wrap and laid it upon the counter with deliberate care. She took her hand back, leaving the gold behind, a promise. Child nodded and cleared her throat. Second, did you drown in the sea? The woman's eyes narrowed and she gave a slight shake of the head. No, I was drowned in the sea. Give me your hand, Child said as she uncorked the unfinished bottle and slid it forward. Scentless hesitated a breath, then held her wrapped hand above it. Child grasped it in her own, felt the lush weave of the fabric, softer than any silk. She pricked the woman's finger with a fine needle. Scentless sucked air through her teeth, but did not flinch. Child squeezed drops of the cloth into the bottle, drops that were not red. 1, 2. The deep teal ichor was slow and viscous. Child whisked the bottle away and gave the woman her hand back, then stirred the mixture with the needle and sniffed. Metallic brine tingled her nose, mingling with the fresh air aroma of leaves. It would not last. The ichor would decay and lose its scent, but Child suspected it would last for as long as the woman needed. She corked the vial and did not bother to wax it. Scentless gathered both, bowed her thanks, and turned to leave. Wait, Child blurted, and blushed as the woman glanced back, one thick brow raised. What will you do? This, she held up cardamom over violet, will be for me. And this, she held up the other, is for the sister who squats in my home. Long after Scentless had gone, Child closed the shop and stepped under the red light of the sun's regard, gold rope heavy in her pocket. In one hand, she clutched a new vial, its wax stamped with a sigil of her own making. She held it to the bloodied light, the contents sloshing slowly within their confines. It smelled of air and earth, of sand underfoot, and rain threatening above. It smelled of a storm about to break. A fitting name to start a new life in a new city, far away from the nameless child who had blended a killer's end. Ozone over Fern turned toward the market. She was going to need a wrap before she could buy a workshop of her own. That is the end. That is, as far as I know, still available on shimmer.com.
I believe it is. I can toss in a link. It's so good to hear that read in your voice. I've always loved that story. We always have to take a breath in between the stories. Thank you, Megan. Our next reader is Sam Rebelein. Sam Rebelein holds an MFA in creative writing from Goddard College with a focus on horror and memoir. Starting this fall, he'll be a PhD candidate in English literature and film at Texas Tech University. His work has appeared in Bourbon Pen, Planet Scum, Shimmer Magazine, Dark Moon Digest, Ellen Datlow's Best Horror of the Year, and elsewhere. You can also find his self-published collection, 15 Smells, for $12.99 on Amazon. He lives in Poughkeepsie, New York, and on Twitter at Hillary Scruff. Welcome, Sam.
Hey, I am so excited to be here again. That was such a great story, Megan. Thank you for sharing. The piece that I'm going to read tonight should be coming out in Coffin Bell Journal next month, which is a really cool magazine that I'm excited to be a part of. This is sort of a story and also sort of a monologue. It's called Everything You Ever Feared Was True is True. Hey everyone, I'm Seth. I was good for a while, but I started again when this woman told me she had bones under her house. This was about a year ago. It really knocked me for a loop. I'm good again now, but for a while after that, damn. I used to manage this thing of townhouses in Poughkeepsie off of 115, right by that big storage place. You can get on the rail trail from there, walk by that cemetery. Anyway, my place was at the very end of the row, which was probably on purpose now that I think about it. People had to really walk over to you if they had a problem, and most people were too lazy to. That was always kind of a bummer, actually, because I like helping people. Part of the reason I took the job in the first place, so I could help out. You got a problem with your sink? I'm there. Loose tile? You're on. No heat? Let me buy you a blanket. I don't know. But nobody asked for help. I mean, hardly ever. It was too much of a walk, everybody too fat and lazy. So that was, so when this chick knocks on my door and I answer it and she goes, "My name is Eliza. I live over in 102." I'm like, damn, you really want to talk to me? Because 102 is at the opposite end of the row, you know? So I'm glad I'm listening. And she goes, "I got bones in my house." And I'm like, sorry, what? She starts pointing behind her and waving her hand around, trying to explain. It's 10 p.m. in August, so it's all wet, hot, and dark, and these bugs keep tinking against the little porch light over her head. It's lighting her up with this yellow flicker light, like some faded film about a crazy person. She's about 45, all skinny and worried, hair frizzed out, sweat on her upper lip. She's going, "My home has like a very negative energy. It's been really bad these last few weeks, and my family is just suffering a lot. I'm feeling depressed and there's anger. It's just very dark in there." "Oh, you need a new bulb?" I say. She gives me this big explosion of a laugh, like she's about to burst at any second. Like this laugh is this whoosh of sparks that comes when you light the fuse and the blow is somewhere inside, itching to come out. She goes, "Yeah, right. No, so I did some research and I found that there used to be this family who lived there in the 60s and their little girl went missing." She pauses, lets that hit. I feel like I'm supposed to be like, "That's terrible," or something. So, "That's terrible." Yeah, nobody could figure out what happened to her. But this family also had a new garage installed around the same time she vanished. So I'm thinking, I stop her. I'm like, "Oh, wait a second. Hold on. I don't know anything about that," because I'm afraid she's going to accuse me of something. I mean, she walked all the way down here. It starts raving. I don't know. I didn't want to get stuck with some liability shit. Plus, I'd been managing that property for about 2 years, and if anybody known anything about that, I feel like I would have heard, right? Then again, if it was the 60s when this happened, it would have been long past that duty to disclose shit. But still, no rumors or ghost stories or nothing like that floating around the complex, and then all of a sudden, this Eliza chick starts rambling on about bones under her house. I don't know, man. But she just goes, "But that can happen, right? Restless energy affecting a space. Have you had complaints about that unit before?" "Not that I could remember." "Well," she goes, "happens all the time. You get a negative energy in your home from." She flicks her hands like the word ghost is some fly she's swatting away so she doesn't have to say it out loud. "Anyway, you absorb that energy. I've dealt with this kind of thing before. Bugs are starting to fly into my house and shit, and I'm letting out all the cold, but I lean against the door jamb. And again, I'm just trying to help. She's not accusing me of anything. So I'm like encouraging. "Really? You have?" "I have," tossing her hair a bit. "I've lived in houses with negative energy. I've attracted unhealthy spirits before. Our apartment before this one, something totally bad happened there. I mean, you can feel it. It affects your mood, gives you the goddamn willies. And here I've just felt this." She shoves her fingers down, or she shoves her hands down, fingers spread out. "This crushing feeling. Even my kids can feel it." Well, to be fair, man, depression runs in families. Like, I know depression. "True. Yeah, true." That one throws her for a loop, I can tell, but she sticks to her guns. "Yeah, but I know natural depression, and this isn't that. This is something different." Her eyes get dark, and for a second, it seems like the bugs over her head are still. Like there's this solemn steadiness radiating off her, like she's not going to budge because she's right, and she knows it. I don't know about ghosts or energies in general. Aliens I'd buy, but I've never had like an experience, and I've lived in some fucked places. Like if there was an experience to be had, I would have had it, I'm pretty sure. My mom used to say she got visited by tall men when she was little. They just stand in the corner and watch her watching them, and in the morning there'd be no sign of them. Happened half a dozen times, according to her. But as far as like that shit goes, that's about it for me. But Eliza is so earnest about this. I can't not believe her. And here she is walking all the way over here to tell me this. So I say, you think this missing girl is under your garage, and her restless spirit is, she's already nodding, so I don't have to finish that thought out loud. The more she nods, the more her hair frizzes out. I just realized it has to be her energy, you know, her sadness and loss radiating out. Like, she moves her hand around some more in waves, like working its way into my family. And I know how that must sound. I make some non-committal grunt, like, oh, don't say that. It's gotta be what's been making me so depressed lately. And my husband has been lashing out. He's usually so nice, the sweetest guy, but I dig my thumb into my eyebrow, which is where I used to get these headaches. It's a bad sign when they show up. I mean, I gotta be ready for them, you know? You're not careful, start getting headaches, you wanna cover up the noise, right? And that's always bad. But I'm staying pretty calm, and I'm like, all right, so how can I help? She grins. Well, I know this is a big ask, but do you think you could help me dig up the garage? Oh shit, that's a big ask. I know, but I have to put her to rest. So you'd what? Dig her up and then bury her again in the yard, make a little headstone? She keeps that grin glued on and shrugs. I guess, something like that. Before I can say anything, this huge moth lands on her head, just perches on top of this mountain of frizzed graying hair and sits there like a bow in her hair. And she's fixing me with those eyes. I don't know. Like I said, I've never exactly believed in ghosts, but I believe in people. Look, I tell her, I'm really not supposed to do that kind of thing. And she's like, of course. But I say, if you keep it to yourself, like really, if folks hear you've been messing with your garage, they'll want to change their walls, fix up the kitchens. This place will be nuts with improvements that aren't actually approved by the, I point my finger at the sky, upper management. Of course, she says again. But if you keep this between us and maybe keep the mess hidden until some kind of storm, like make sure nobody sees it and thinks you're renovating anything. Maybe we can say a tree fell on it or some shit. Then I will help. How does that sound? All of a sudden, Eliza starts nodding so hard, I feel like her head's gonna fly off. She starts thanking me and shit, almost starts crying there on my porch. She keeps patting my arm. You're a really good man, she says, a really good man. It's making my headache worse the way she says that. So I'm like, it's all good, no worries. Just wait here a sec. I'll be back. I close the door on her, and as I do, I can see that one moth fly away from her hair, like my work here is done or some shit. I think about texting my boss, but it's kind of late and he is kind of nosy, so there'd be no way to ask him if he knew anything about a missing girl without also busting Eliza for wanting to dig up her garage and busting myself too. So obviously that's a hard pass. I just take a second to do a quick Google for missing girls in Poughkeepsie. I do a couple different combinations of words and things. You gotta hit that exact sweet spot sometimes. But I can only find one little article. It's got to be the same one Eliza found because it has just enough detail to be creepy without being informative. Yeah, there was a girl who went missing. Yes, she lived here. She was never found. And somebody commented on the article that they heard her parents killed her, some insurance scam or something. Somebody else replies to that, says their cousin lived next door, and the family did have a new garage put in around then, so who knows? But all of this is like internet hearsay, which is usually useless. I mean, I feel like that goes without saying. But damn, man, I mean, it is there. And the kind of people who lived in that complex with me, I wouldn't put it past any of them to need a quick fix of insurance money. Either way, I'm intrigued. I mean, hell, I was just watching TV before she knocked on my door, but this is kind of exciting, you know? Maybe I'll solve a cold case or some shit. So I grabbed this sledgehammer that's been sitting in my garage. I used to do some construction work after high school, and I still had all these random tools lying around. I didn't know what else I'd need. I mean, I figured I'd kind of just see what everything looked like and go from there. So I just take the hammer and I go back outside. Eliza is still standing there under the light, and when she sees the hammer, she gets very excited. She leads me back to her unit, thanking me and patting my shoulder and shit the entire way. It is so hot outside. I'm already sweating by the time we get to her door. And that door, shit. I mean, everybody in the place had the same brown door, but hers was this cracking, ugly brown, panels peeling in big, dry hunks. Definitely the kind of place you'd bury a kid under. Not that I know personally, I'm just saying. She ushers me inside and asks if I want a glass of water. Like I said, I'm sweating, so I'm like, yeah, that would be great. Thank you. And I stand there all awkward as she goes into the kitchen to get me one. I'm holding this sledgehammer like some weird ass Ghostbuster, wondering what I'm going to find. Is it going to be something spooky? Now, all the units had the same layout, right? But this place, the carpet is this shitty beige, wine stained and cigarette burned. There's that ammonia cat smell burning in the air, making every breath feel like a heavy, wet towel. Coffee table covered in old water-warped magazines and crusty plates like crusty. There are toys all over the floor, Marvel heroes and dinosaurs and shit. A lot of them are broken, missing arms, legs. There's Kleenex all over the place, crumpled up in old, dry wads. The sofa's fallen apart, weird yellow shit oozing out of the seams. There's a towel wrapped around one of the seats with a book of crosswords and a little dictionary next to it. I figure that's Eliza's spot. There's a TV on, which Eliza has set to some sitcom, but you can hardly see the top right part of the screen because it's all dented and cracked. The color is all melting and staticky. All the faces that pass over that part of the screen get bent and ghoulish. And to top it all off, somewhere down the hall, there's a kid crying. Crying and crying and crying behind some closed door I can't even see. I wonder how many other places in the property looked like this. I'd seen pretty much all of them once or twice when people moved in, but over time, everything changes, right? Everything rots. It starts to the second you move in. And there I was all alone in my place at the end of the row, totally oblivious. My headache is starting to grow again, standing there, and I start holding the sledgehammer more tight. I dig a knuckle into my eyebrow, trying to rub away the pain, that it feels like shoving your thumb into a bruise or picking at a scab that isn't healed. You know, you shouldn't do it, but you do. There's a cough, and I realize this guy is sitting in the armchair in the corner. He's watching TV, doesn't even glance at me. I probably wouldn't even noticed him if he hadn't have coughed. Just part of the furniture, really. So I'm like, what's up? I'm Seth, clutching this hammer. He goes, sure. The kid keeps crying down the hall, big, raw cries. The dude keeps staring at the screen. I'm like, what what are you watching? He takes in this big breath, gives a big sigh. I don't know, some goddamn laugh-a-thon. The TV gives off this canned laughter. He doesn't take his eyes off it, points with a can of beer at it. See? Laugh a minute. I noticed this 24-pack of Rolling Rock next to the chair and this plastic bag filled with empties. I wonder how long he's been sitting there. Is your kid okay? I ask. His cries are starting to slice into my skull. Oh, he waves his hand. He's just making a fucking point. Cool, cool. I tighten my hand on the hammer, start looking around again. That's when I see this one shelf on the wall behind him. It's the only place in the room that's clean. clean and filled with crystals. Well, crystals, ornaments, a large shell with this half-burnt stick of sage, dream catchers, animal totems, incense burners, Himalayan salt lamp, the works. Geez, I say, this all your wife's? Sure as shit ain't mine. I wouldn't spend my money on that shit. Always looking for a reason. Gotta be horoscopes and astrology and shit. Change your vibe with a crystal. Control, you know? It's a bullshit waste of time. Could be spending her time cleaning up this fucking dump. Could get a job for once. You know what I mean? And what do you do? He has to raise his voice now over the kid in the other room. I got laid off a few weeks ago. He glances at me, this one hard dart of a look, then back at the TV, and I'm putting my foot down. Figure it's her turn to do something other than read cards and shit all day. I've worked hard enough. And he drinks. Now I'm remembering what Eliza said about the ghost energy being really bad the last few weeks, which I guess would have been around the time that this dude got laid off, but I don't say anything about that, obviously. I just say, well, she seems to like it. She doesn't like it, she trusts it. Fucking driving me crazy. No grip on reality. Eliza comes back in the room with a glass of very cloudy water. You know, Seth, I was thinking if we do find the body, we'll have to stop digging immediately and call the police, you know? I'm like, sure. And I look at that water. I'm actually okay on the water, thanks. Do you have to... I gesture to the hall with the hammer. The kid's cries are clawing into my brain. Headaches pumping. Oh, she waves her hand. He's just making a point. The garage is this way. When you're done, clean up these fucking dishes, says the dude in the chair. Of course, honey. She puts the water on the coffee table and starts leading me to the garage. We pass by the door the cries are coming from, and I swear somebody was bleeding out in there, and I just walked on by. The garage is all bare, no car except for a punching bag in the corner and some duct-taped, dusty ski poles. There's 2 bowling ball bags and some tennis rackets. I'm wondering who did all the skiing and tennising. I almost asked Eliza about it, but she's already standing in the middle of the floor, this big bare fluorescent buzzing over her head, making her hair look like pale cobwebs. I sense it here, she goes, gesturing down at the floor, moving her fingers in circles. All right, I say. You sure about this? We can hear some more canned laughter from the other room. She glances at the door to the house and goes, I'm sure. And suddenly, I am too. It sounds crazy, but as soon as she says that, I can definitely feel something, you know? I mean, there's absolutely some energy coming up from the floor. I walk around on it a bit and I get this pulse in my feet. Something bad is here. You can smell it in the whole place, like mold, only thicker. Something heavy, dark. And I'm like, oh shit, we might actually find something. Eliza goes, you feel it? I nod. I start raining the hammer in my hands. Yeah, I go, yeah, I do. Well, she says, whenever you're, and thank you again. My pleasure, I tell her. Okay, stand back. She does, presses herself against the wall, and I start swinging that goddamn sledgehammer, start pounding it into the concrete, thinking about what we're going to find. Is it going to be bones? Some cursed ass little girl? Who knows, man? I just keep swinging and sweating, and this chick's just standing there flinching as all these chunks of concrete go flying. I bring up these huge chunks and throw them into the corner with both hands. She offers me water again, but I don't know about that cloudy shit coming from the tap. So I say I'm all good, even though so much sweat is getting in my eyes, it stings, and I can taste it. And it's dripping into the hole in the ground, and my hands are throbbing, and my bones hurt like that headache is in my arms and legs now too. But I keep pounding, and there's just more and more dirt. I walk back to my place and get a shovel, and I start busting into the earth under the concrete, and there's just more and more dirt. I dig all night, but there's no bones, no girl, no nothing. It's all just dirt. Wherever that little girl is, she ain't here, because here is just worms and rot and gunk. And that's when I knew that everything just is. It ain't no bad voodoo or vibes or whatever. It's all just random hurt and loss and scrabbling. It all just is. And nobody wants to see the world for what it just is. Nobody can see the world for what it is, because why the fuck would you want to? It's way better to give yourself a little blindfold, a little reason, and you can't actually help anybody but yourself. And even that, it's just help yourself a little bit at a time, a little blindfold, fade out a piece a day. And that's when I started using again. That very second, as soon as it hit me, we were never going to find Bones. I just walked right out of her place, left her crying in the corner of the garage, whimpering, where is she? She has to be here. And I never saw Eliza again in my fucking life. I just walked right over to this guy I knew had some a few doors down, still carrying the sledgehammer and everything, almost morning, like 4 a.m., head pounding, covered in sweat and dirt. But I knew he'd help me out. Told him I'd knock a few bucks off his rent if he gave me some, and he did. He gave me some. And I started using again. Easy as that. It always is. And that was pretty bad for a while. Really bad. But I am here now again, so that's something. Every day is something. I don't think I got anything from that night. I mean, I still think everything just is, and I'm working on that higher power and all. At the end of the day, it was a night that I got through, and I saw the morning, and every time you do that, it's a night that counts no matter what, right? Whatever stupid bullshit comes up, even if the sun rises and you're knocking on somebody's door looking for pills or whatever, at least you saw the morning. And that's always something, I think. I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Thanks for letting me share. And that's the end. And I just want to say, because I feel like that's sort of a downer of an ending. I am a really big fan of Florence and the Machine's music, and I found that a song of hers that pairs really well with just my vibe of this story and how I feel about it is her song No Choir. So if you're feeling this story and want a nice sort of vibe to lift out of it, I think No Choir has some really nice music or really nice lyrics and bit to it. So
Oh, I loved it, man. It was a great story. Wonderful reading.
Thanks,
too.
Man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love them both. I loved that we had one story that sort of surprised us by being a mystery and another one that surprised us by not being one. And they're so different in tone, but they feel like they know each other. The stories really feel that way to me.
Yeah, both really intimate in a way too.
Well, Megan, Sam, thank you both so much for reading for us tonight. This has really been a wonderful evening. Next week is going to be completely different. We have Terry Bruce and Shannon K. Garrity. You can keep up to date about upcoming authors at storyhour2020.com and see any programs you may have missed. Just rewatch this one with me on the Story Hour page at Facebook. Gosh, I'm really kind of overwhelmed. Thank you for those wonderful stories. And Daniel, thank you for bringing us Story Hour in the first place so we could hear them together. And a big thanks to all of you who are joining us here tonight and all of you who are joining us later for being part of Story Hour and just gathering around this campfire with us. Good night.
Good night, everybody.